Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order, welcome to Herpanmo TV and welcome to this, the second part of this Watch Party trilogy. The film, of course, we are reviewing, if you watch the introduction, there's a link in the description box to that, is They Live, John Carpenter classic from 1988. And so this is the review part of this particular trilogy, so that I've introduced it. I'm now going to give you a review, and the next part after this will be the live stream, which will probably be this weekend. But I'm just giving you my review of the film now to save time and save me reading off a lead off in the live stream. They Live from 1988, directed and written by John Carpenter, starring Roddy Piper, Keith David, Meg Foster, and many others. It's a B movie essentially. It is a B movie. It's probably Meg Foster is the best known cast member in the film. And I must say she's very alluring in this particular film. She's obviously she's a good looking lady, and she's got a very sexy voice, I must say. I think she's still acting. I haven't seen her lately, you know. But yeah, she was a good person to cast in that role, actually, in this mysterious kind of, very mysterious but very kind of erotic sort of person. So that was a good bit of casting there. Now, this film was a flop when it first came out. It crashed at the box office. It received a lot of bad criticism from the critics. The critics hated it, and you know what I think of the critics. Incidentally, you know, why do we always have this thing saying, "Oh my God, they're defying the critics"? That is when the viewers go out and watch a film and the critics don't like it, and they do. You know, Rotten Tomatoes, 80% viewer, 20% critics, or something like that. So the critics have some kind of authority over us? Surely they don't. But anyway, you know, so critics for me are just famous people with opinions, and I don't think there's anything that qualifies you to be a film critic, is there? Do you have to go to school and learn about a film or something? I mean, anyone can be a bloody critic. Why should someone from The Guardian's opinion be worth more than mine about a particular film? Anyway, that's just a thought. It's a B movie, underrated at the time, panned by the critics, but like several other films, there's a couple others like it. Over the years, it has gained more and more popularity. In the same way Wag the Dog has. Wag the Dog is another one. It was quite obscure when it came out in 1997, but it's become more popular over time. Very slowly there's been a groundswell of fans that have grown up around this film. And They Live actually is something of a cult classic now, and it's inspired a lot of popular culture. There's a graffiti artist called what's his name, Shepard Fairey. He has a franchise which is called Obey, and a lot of his art is based on the film They Live. There's lots of other examples of that. There's numerous memes it's created in the internet age. John Carpenter, he does almost everything with this. He wrote the script, made the story. He co-wrote the script. Sorry, he actually did have a collaborator with the script, but he wrote the story and directed the film, of course, and composed the score. It's a it's a great score, actually. It has like a harmonica. It's like a kind of almost Wild West kind of music. It's very good. This is actually based on a short story. There's a short story by an author I'd not heard of, actually, called Ray Nelson. Now, apparently he's a fairly famous American science fiction author who's collaborated with Philip K. Dick on a particular book once, and has made numerous others of his own, works of his own. And this is a short story called 8 O'Clock in the Morning, published in 1963. This guy's actually still alive. He's 90 years old, but he's still alive, and I wonder what he thinks of the world today. It's his original story that the film was adapted from. Now, there's going to be spoilers here. I think spoilers are a little bit redundant in our community, the UFO paranormal conspiracy theory community, because it's just such a it's just such a sort of like it's just such a foundational movie that surely very few people have actually not seen it. Anyway, you had your opportunity to watch it. Anyway, I did give you the instructions. The first scene we introduced to the main character, a man with no name. He is, in fact, several of the characters actually are nameless. Now, there's he is credited in the credits. It's simply, this is Roddy Piper's character. Roddy Piper being a Canadian pro wrestler who is has Scottish roots and is very proud of it. He wears a kilt, plays the bagpipe, stuff like that. Spends a lot of time in Scotland, or used to. He died in 2015 actually during the I mean it was during the Basis Project conference, and I was the MC and I did a couple of little tributes to him. I think I explained that in the introduction, don't I? But he's credited, his name in the credit is simply Nada, N-A-D-A, Nada. Now that actually means Spanish. That actually means nothing in Spanish. And I've heard actually many Americans use the word nada. I don't know if it has anything to do with this film, but I've heard Americans use the word, English-speaking Americans use the word nada. They say, oh, nah, just as a slang. And American English has of course been influenced by Spanish. There's lots of words that non-Hispanic Americans use of Spanish origin, you know, no problemo, things like that. They say things like that. Hasta la vista, baby, and things like that. This guy, there's very little background story to him actually. We know, all we're told about him is he worked in Denver. This is set in the United States of America. It's actually filmed in Los Angeles, California. Gareth Davis actually used to live near where it was filmed, and he took a couple of trips to the various outdoor location scenes. All we know about him is he worked in Denver for 10 years. He ran away from home at the age of 13 because his father was very violent and at one point threatened to cut his throat with a razor. That's all we know about this guy. There's very, very little backstory to this character. He's not only nameless, he's rootless. He's described as being one of the police officers after him at one point. One of the creatures describes him as being in his 30s. He's a 30-something working class man, down on his luck. This is actually set in I suppose it was made in 1988, but it was meant to be maybe futuristic. Possibly from today's perspective we could say it's the recent past. It's where there's an economic collapse. It's very obvious there's an economic collapse going on. There's a lot of unemployment, there's a lot of homelessness, there's people sleeping rough on the streets all the time, people desperate for any work they can get hold of. The first thing that Nada does when he arrives in his new location, you just see him walking. He's got a rucksack and you see him walking across a railway yard, and I think it's implied that he stowed away aboard a freight train. That's how traditionally a lot of Americans get around. When they're down on their money, they just stow away in freight cars on trains. The first place he goes to is the job centre, and they just say, we've got nothing for you. And again, there's loads of people in the job centre. There's a disabled guy with one leg in a wheelchair. Everyone's there trying to just survive in this financial crash. Then he comes across a street preacher, a blind man, who he reads from the Bible, but he also implies that there's an evil force at work in his speech that has taken over, he says, the hearts and minds of the leaders and things like that. So this preacher, this blind man, is just warning the people that there are evil forces at work in the world, in control. The world is essentially, he says, that you assume he means Satan. There's bad people in control, run by evil spiritual forces. It's a clue. They've taken the hearts and minds of our leaders, and Nada stops to watch this guy speak. And in the next, he also see. It's very funny because there's a TV showroom with all the screens in the window. I don't think you get that anymore now. He used to in the 80s. used to get TV screens. One of the symbols of the lost generation, or sorry, the haunted generation again. And when it comes to haunted, Nada walks past this TV showroom. There's a man just standing there, completely silent, watching the screens. You can't even hear. There's not even any sound, but he's just staring at the screens, like a statue. Which, of course, is what TV does. It hypnotizes people. This symbolism, actually, of television having a power over people's minds it's very prevalent within this film. There's police cars everywhere, helicopters. There's a sense that there is a law and order problem, high crime rates, which often happens during an economic collapse. One of the another characters actually talks about how there's an epidemic of violence and the police are cracking down on it. And Nada gets a casual job at a building site. Now, when he tries to get it, this is another feature of the problems of the present day, and I've touched on it many times, especially in my talks about hospital portering. He tries to get into this building site, and the manager's very reluctant to take him on, and said, "This is a union business." And he says, "Look," she says, "Can I have a job?" And the manager says, "This is a union business." He says, "Can I talk to the shop steward then?" Indicating that the shop steward essentially is in charge. That's often a feature you get, like trade unions. I've got mixed feelings about trade unions. There's no doubt they've done good over the years, but they're also a source of intense corruption. I found that out myself. I've talked about that in my hospital portering videos. But he gets this casual job. Again, casualisation, another feature of that has been done. Casualisation is something I watched happen during my 23 years in hospital portering. So many jobs that are your professional work is transformed into casual jobs, into casual employment, and this is done deliberately. This is a policy in terms of recruitment, in terms of pay and conditions and things like that. They turn what is a professional job, in which the staff are committed and part of a community, into a job where people just come and go whenever they like. Of course, a casual workforce is not as good as a professional workforce. As I said, the people are not committed, they don't feel any sense of belonging, which is what hospital portering was. Hospital portering gave me a huge sense of belonging. It was something I was a part of. It wasn't just a job, it was a life, it was what I did, it was what I was. And I fought to preserve that in the face of rising casualisation. And with casualisation, agency work, things like that. How many agency workers are there in the country today? Millions. There used to be about 30,000. It went up enormously. Agency work is just where you get moved from pillar to post. You're never in one place for very long. You never have a contract with your place of employment. You're just, the agency just provides you. What this does is it means there's a continuously transient workforce. As I said, a professional workforce is better quality. You have people who are committed. You have people who are part of a team, which you have greater efficiency, greater expertise, more experience. With casualisation, you get none of that. The experience is lost. People are not bothered. They don't give a damn. They're just there to put in their hours, get the money and go. As a result, casual employment produces a very poor standard of service, a very poor quality workforce and a poor quality employer. But it prevents people from, firstly, it breaks down a sense of social cohesion, which is what they're trying to do all over the place. The Illuminati-occupied world is essentially trying to cut us all off from each other, turn us into atomized individuals, and one of the ways they do that is to break down workplace communities. Workplace communities are essential, especially for men. And let's face it, guys, it's men who do the fighting in this world. So it's not exclusively, there are women who do the fighting too, but it's mostly men, isn't it? And it's a way of demoralizing us, breaking us apart, breaking us down. And so Nada goes and works on this building site. He's got his own tools. He's just like he breaks up things and things. He does building labouring, and then he says, "When do I get paid?" And they say, "Oh, next Thursday." You know, it's one of those sort of jobs. And luckily, though, he's befriended by a man called Frank, who lives in a shanty town run by a man called Gilbert. And this is a rebellion against that kind of thing, because these are people who are down and out, who have built a kind of community of homemade houses. Now, this again is very, very prophetic, because California especially was the seat of the foreclosure scandal. So you have this shanty town is not just your usual down and out. You have families there. Clearly, people are clearly of middle class backgrounds, and they are living in these tents and in makeshift huts. They're cooking communally, but they seem to be making the best of it. And Nada, luckily, Frank invites him, and he goes along to this place. Now, and then Frank then gives you his backstory, and it's very interesting to compare him with Nada, because he's a former steel worker, another working class guy. He's married and has children, but he hasn't seen the children and his wife or children for 6 months, because he's been going around trying to get work. He goes wherever the work is and sends the money home to them. Again, that's what you have to do in an economic problems. If your family's in one town and there's no work, you've got to go somewhere else or live or be unemployed. So that's now the thing about Frank is he talks about how he was made redundant from his steelworks, and he says that they offered management everything. They took a cut in wages, they took a cut in conditions, because the company, the steelworks was in dire straits financially, close to bankruptcy. So they did their bit by taking a cut in wages. And then he says, it turns out the bosses just gave themselves raises. They just took the money and pocketed it. And he says the classic line, the golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules. Frank is a cynical person, tired of life, wearied by experience. He's despondent, and he's desperate too. He actually says at one point we should take a sledgehammer to the foreign cars of the executives. Meaning, because the steelworks obviously, it's like pressed steel in Oxford. Its main purpose is for metal for cars, and they're importing foreign cars, and the steelwork owners have foreign imports, so they're not even buying their own product, keeping American cars in business. And he also says, you know, he says several things which indicate that he's a believer in a dog-eat-dog world, a survival of the fittest situation. A bit like Charles, you know, it's a dog-eat-dog world, man. I'm a predator, survival of the fittest. I'm at the top of the food chain in this law of the jungle. I'm the leopard stalking through the jungle, that sort of thing. So he's very much I'm not sure he sees himself that way, but Frank he's a bitter man, and he doesn't want to do anything. He says, look, I've got a wife and kid back home. Every time Nada says, you know, we've got to do something, or are we ever going to change things? And he doesn't believe there's any point in changing things. He just says, basically, he's one of these guys who just wants to keep his head down, do what he has to do to survive, and not rock the boat. He's given up all hope of things improving. He's just trying to live his own life as best as he can. And then there's a television set in the community, set up around some seats. You know, it's a kind of outdoor lounge. And then there's this. It's rather like the Vrillon broadcast. You know, when that supposed alien hacked the TV, and this was years ago. But the Vrillon Ashtar Command thing. That was funny. That is. And there's a recording of that online. Oh, excuse me. There's this TV hack. This guy, this man, appears on the TV. He's hacking the signal to get into the TV to try and reach people, and he keeps being cut off. You know, if the TV goes fuzzy and then keeps coming back, and he's warning people about what's going on. Funny thing is, this TV, it causes people to have headaches. There's a character in it played by George Buckflower. Again, someone you don't know, but he keeps saying, "Oh, him again." You know, the hacker. He comes up later in the story as well. And the funny thing is that the blind preacher is standing nearby. He's mouthing the words of the hacker on the screen as if he knows the words. He knows what the hacker's going to say. And then Nada notices some strange goings on at the church. There's Gilbert, the guy who runs the community, keeps nipping over there with the preacher, and you hear singing from the church. Presumably it's just a choir, you know. It's a choir, guys. It's a choir. This hacker, he speaks very urgently and very, very darkly, and he's warning people, saying he mentions he runs through a list of various social, political and economic problems that are going on. Then he says, he keeps referring to them, they. Keeps saying they are in control, they have power, they run everything, but their only weapon is their secrecy. They fear exposure. We want to expose them, things like that. Eventually, and he keeps on, we must stop the signal. Somehow there's a signal going on. There's some kind of signal being broadcast. This man wants to stop. Nada's curiosity eventually leads him to go and visit the church, where he discovers that there is no choir there. You keep hearing a choir singing, but there's nothing going on in there, except a tape recorder broadcasting the sound of people singing a choir. And there's some kind of laboratory for making something, and what they're making is sunglasses, pairs of black sunglasses. And there you see in another room, it cuts to another room, and there you see Gilbert and the blind preacher and the hacker, the TV hacker, are all together with some other people, and they're talking about distributing these sunglasses. Funnily enough, it's the only time in the film you hear what the proper name for the sunglasses are by the people who made them. They're called Hoffman lenses. These sunglasses, Hoffman lenses, and I do wonder where they got the name. I mean, it could be that there's a guy called Hoffman who designed them or something. But Albert Hoffman, I've often wondered if it has some connection to LSD, because Albert Hoffman was the man who discovered, he first discovered LSD. Sorry, there's a bit of background noise, I'm just getting rid of it. He discovered LSD, where is it? There we go. He discovered LSD, isolated LSD. I don't know if there's a connection there. But the preacher catches Nada, but then trusts him. He ends up trusting him. When Nada goes back and tells Frank, Frank of course says, "Look, just leave it alone. Leave it alone." Frank, as I said, is a cynical, tired, bitter individual without hope. Nothing can change. Leave it alone. And he just says, you know, if you don't go looking for trouble, trouble won't come your way. It's rather like the hobbits in Lord of the Rings, you know. You stay, don't go. Remember that old hobbit in Lord of the Rings who says, keep away from trouble, keep your nose out of others' business, and they'll keep their nose out of yours. Trouble won't come your way if you don't go looking for trouble. Of course, in Lord of the Rings, that's not true, is it? And but this is what Frank believes. You see, Nada, on the other hand, is more idealistic. There's several times he makes comments to Frank, and Frank looks at him as if he's a bit naive, saying, you know, oh well, you know, things aren't that bad. You think things are, we've still got hope. He makes several comments like that through the film, and in the first act of the film when they first meet, and they're at the shanty, and Frank looks at him and rolls his eyes a bit like this. This guy's naive. He hasn't been there, man. He doesn't know. He doesn't, you know, things. Well, it's weird. It's annoying when this happens, because I've been in this situation. Because when people who are nihilistic and cynical, when they realise you're idealistic and hopeful, they tend to assume you've had an easy life and you haven't really had any problems. They don't know that. In my case, that's not true. I have, but they just assume it. They assume, well, this guy's obviously had no problems. He hasn't been there, man, like I have. he hasn't been there, man, you know. And they do this, yeah, I've been there, man, I've been there. If you've been there, man, too, you'd be like me, you'd agree with me, man, and things like that. I find that annoying, and there's an element of that in Frank. Then the police raid the the shanty. The police. It's obvious they've worked out what's going on. They raid the shanty. They're after the church. They go for the church. Obviously, they're trying to track down the people with these sunglasses for reasons that you'll find out later in the film. But they attack the shanty as well. The riot cops go in there with shields, and they have a bulldozer as well. There's a very upsetting scene. Where the bulldozer is pushing, the police is pushing people out of the way, and the bulldozer is crushing their homes. It pushes over like a dormobile or camper van, where there's a woman with a child in there, and then they have to rescue the child. It reminds me of those horrible scenes in Canada when the police broke up the trucker protest. That was awful. When the police did that, it's just again, you know, the police. The idea of people, because of course, as you'll know, is that there's this non-human force in control of the world, but some of the people working for them are humans. They're humans who are of planet Earth, who are working for this non-human alien force. And they're working for these. This is a malevolent extraterrestrial species, and the humans are working for them rather than their own species. And that's something that happens over and over again. There's a lot of it's a film that can be interpreted in many ways, like I've said. Some people consider it a left-wing film, others consider it a right-wing film, where, you know, the aliens represent Jays, the people I talk about in my band video. It could be interpreted in many, many ways. And the police, you see the police beating the hacker and the preacher, and the poor preacher is sad actually. He's reciting the 23rd Psalm, you know, oh, I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, and the police continue beating them as the others run away, and you presume they kill them. It's presumed they beat them to death. And throughout this entire film you see shots of TV screens, and it's usually some insipid commercialised stuff. You know, there's a woman saying, oh, my nail extensions are wonderful, or oh, you know, it's all clothing, you know, these fashion shows and things like that. It's obviously, it is a satire on consumerism. The whole thing is a satire on consumerism. And then of course what happens next is the most famous scene. Nada has found, he goes back to the church. They all go back to the shanty when the police have left, trying to recover whatever they have, whatever they can find. And Nada goes into the church, and he takes a box of sunglasses, Hoffman lenses, and then he puts them on. And then there's the most famous scene of the film, which you probably watched, even if you haven't. You may have seen the scene even if you haven't watched the film. When he puts on the sunglasses, the world around him is transformed. He can, in place of billboards and magazines and things like that, everything where there's writing or pictures are words: obey, consume, don't question authority, stay asleep, no independent thought, things like that. And when he takes the glasses off, everything looks normal again. And you may think, you know, the glasses are doing something to him, they're making him go weird and seeing weird things, but it's the other way around. When he takes the glasses off, he's seeing what's not really there. The glasses allow him to see what's really there. And at one point, there's some of them are themed. Some of the actual messages, these subliminal messages, which the glasses expose to the wearer, are relevant to what they appear on. So, for example, you see a keeper of a book and magazine stand, and he's holding some money in his hand, and it says on the money, "This is your God." Money is your God. Consumerism again. As I said, I was in the Arndale Centre at the weekend doing my Weird Weekend North video, and I said, you know, it's like a cathedral, isn't it? Um, and then, so then the really scary bit is, a man comes up to the book stand to buy a newspaper. He looks a bit like Clint Eastwood. It's not Clint Eastwood, but he has a kind of, he looks a bit like him. He's actually not an actor I recognise, and through the glasses he looks like he's not human. He's some kind of creature that's human in every way apart from the face. The face is a weird skeletal form with glassy eyes, totally inhuman. And eventually, I mean, you estimate, because when he's got these glasses on, he's going around. It's estimated probably about 10%, maybe 10% of the people passing by are aliens. You can't count them, but he keeps looking around, and eventually he starts pointing it out, and the aliens realise. He points to one of them and says, "Oh, you look different. And think this guy looks okay, but you're ugly. You're butt ugly." And then she goes, "I got one that can see." She speaks into a wristwatch, and the wristwatch are actually communication devices by the aliens use. And he tries to run away. He goes into a bank and utters the classic line, "I have come here to chew bubblegum and to kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum." And he actually has a fight with the police earlier on, and he kills these two alien police. And there's like this little drone thing, this weird flying saucer drone thing, which you can only see with the glasses. And you could hear this voice going, "Stay asleep, stay asleep." There's these signal boosters on tops of traffic signs and things like that, which you can only see with the glasses. And then there's this great shootout at the back. There's some brilliant action scenes in this film. Brilliant. Not the fight scene. I'm going to talk about the fight scene in a minute, the punch up. But the shootouts are fantastic. And he starts shooting the aliens in the bank and leaving the humans, although we find out later it doesn't really make much difference. But he shoots the aliens. And then he escapes by hijacking a car. Meg Foster's character comes into it, and he kidnaps her. He hijacks the car and makes her drive by kidnapping her. And then the funny thing is, he forces her to take him to her home. And she's obviously a well-off lady. She lives in this posh place, this sort of posh neighbourhood on a hillside. And he takes the glasses off, and again he says, the glasses make you ill. We found out later there's some kind of interference which causes headaches and nausea and problems like that. And he's feeling ill. He's like exhausted. He's panting, and the glasses are actually having this effect on him. Meg Foster, a lady named Holly, you know, he keeps saying, "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. I just need to be safe," and things like that. But she eventually, she finds a way to she bottles him and throws him out the window. And he falls but doesn't hurt himself too badly. They go for, I mean, the kind of things these characters go through would have killed them in real life for certain, but they're never actually hurt really badly. I suppose that's the movies for you, isn't it? And then he tries to go back to Frank, and he goes back to the building site, and Frank tells him to get lost. As I say, Frank says, "I don't want any trouble, just go away. You know, it's in the news, you've been killing people." And of course, it has become a news story. Nada's doing this. You see a picture of Nada on a TV screen in the showroom where the man was hypnotised, and you see a picture of him. Obviously, the police are looking for him. And then eventually, when Nada goes back to find the glasses, most of them have gone. Unfortunately, they've been taken by the bin men, but he managed to get one out of a dust cart. Frank offers him, "Look, here's a week's wages. Take that and go." And then there's the fight scene. Now this is a very long, drawn-out, brutal fight scene. There's a lot of violence in this film. It has an 18 certificate. But basically, there's a massive punch-up the last 6 minutes between the two men. And you know, whenever I watch the film now, I'm afraid I forward wind through this bit, because to me it's It's actually quite boring. It's if you watch it once and it's great, but you know, unless you really like movie punch-ups, and it's a good one. It's considered a classic Hollywood punch-up, one of the most classic of all. For me, seeing it once is enough. So I asked myself, what is this long drawn-out scene doing in this film? Why did Carpenter put this scene into this film? This is a reasonably, it's 1 hour, it's 1 hour and 34 minutes. It's an average length Hollywood movie, very well paced throughout the entire rest of the movie. It's very, very well paced indeed. So why is this almost this interlude? It's almost like it's inserted in the film that doesn't belong there, where they're just completely kicking the crap out of each other. And of course they would kill each other in real life if they did that for real. So why is that scene in there? Why is this rather monotonous and tedious fight scene doing in there? It's something that could be 1 minute long, could just be a single punch, just a couple of punches, and then that's the end of it. The reason is, actually I didn't realise this the first time I saw the film, but I worked it out later on. What causes the fight is that Nada holds up the sunglasses and says, "Frank, put these sunglasses on. Put them on. See what I have seen." And Frank recoils and says, "No, never." And he very angrily recoils away from Nada's offer to put the sunglasses on and see what he's seen. And he throws the first punch. Frank throws the first punch. And Nada retaliates and says, "No, put them on." All the way through this fight, he's going, "Put the glasses on, put them on." And he's saying, "No, no." Frank is, which is, again, you'd think, well, Frank, why? I mean, why is Frank behaving like that? Because Frank doesn't even know what these sunglasses are. Why is he so reluctant to put them on? And again, that's kind of like a breakdown of the character, but not really, because I think at that point the film really breaks the fourth wall. This is not the character saying, "No, I'm not going to put them on. These sunglasses, he doesn't even know what they are. Why not just put them on? You know, yeah, sunglasses, put them on. All right." This is the film's creators, the writers, addressing the audience. And Frank has actually ceased to be that character. He is instead a cipher, a concept. And what's being symbolised is the difficulty. Once you yourself, and I'm sure as a conspiracy theorist you've experienced this, once you have seen through the lie, you've seen through the veil, you've realised what's going on, you've looked at alternative information, which has showed you that mainstream information is lies. It's a deception. It's a phantasm. It's a fraud. It's a blind pull over the entire reality of the world to give us and then we're fed a fake illusions. Once a fake illusionary version of what should be reality. Once you've realised that, trying to get other people to see that is extremely difficult. I've had to give up on some people. And I've not actually been beaten up as a result of this, but I've had abuse hurled at me. I've had people unfriending me and turning away from me and things like that. And that is because deep down, subconsciously, these are people who know that what you're saying is true. The moment you start saying, "Oh, I've had it very often with 9/11." You start saying, "We know the buildings, you know, the planes that hit the buildings, and then somehow they just collapse." And the very moment you start down that path with them, very often they'll change the subject, or they'll say, "I don't want to just talk about it," or they'll say, "How can you be so heartless," and things like that. They won't even let you finish, because subconsciously, deep down, they know they are afraid that it is true. They know what you're talking about. They're afraid that it's true, and they don't want to look at it. They don't want to look at it because it's too frightening. It's too upsetting. It's too much of an upheaval in the world that they know, because the illusion is something that they have they become addicted to. It's become essential. It's become their life support machine. I think, you know, in the Matrix it's put very well. You know, there's no bloodshed or punches and kicks needed Morpheus says to Neo, you know, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. They're so dependent on the system that they will fight to preserve it. And that is true. Breaking people out from that is like having a 6-minute puncher. Put the sunglasses on. No, 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 I won't. Eventually, basically Frank, they're both semi-conscious by then, and Nada just goes, he just shoves them on his face like that. Very, very good. It's a very, you see, I did, like I said, I wondered what the hell is that scene doing in? The scene doesn't fit in with the rest of the film. Yet I realise exactly why that scene is in that film now. I realise exactly why. And then Frank and he become allies, and they realise that, and he helps him now. He's on the run. Frank goes with him on the run. They stay in a hotel, and Frank talks about how he believes that these creatures, because they talk about where do they come from, how long have they been here, these aliens, how long have they been in our planet, and he says, I don't know. But then Frank, funnily enough, echoes the blind preacher. He says, you know, the hatred they stir up, it's like they want our hatred, they need our hatred, they feed off it. What does he say? Feeding off our cold fucking hearts. That's what he says. Maybe that's it. Maybe the stress and upset and anger we get into in this world is done for that purpose. Our negative emotions are somehow sustenance for these creatures. I've known many people in our world, not aliens, not Illuminati, people who I call emotional vampires. They get a kick out of making you upset. When they're with you, they say things that they know are going to upset you and anger you, and they do that as some kind of. It is some kind of weird parasitism. They get something from those emotions in you. That's why I call them emotional vampires. And these aren't aliens or Illuminati. These are just people I've known. These are members of my family like that. Carlos Castaneda in his books. David Icke mentions this. I've read the books. I don't remember this particular part, but at one point Carlos, the author, he's been trained basically in Amerindian shamanism by someone called Don Juan Matus, and Don Juan says to him at one point, he talks about I've got the name they use, but there's like a malevolent force in the world. I mean, you can call it Satanism, you can call it the Jinn, you can call it anything you like, Luciferian, whatever you want. But different cultures, different religions, different traditions have located the same thing, and the Native Americans are no exception. Don Juan says they gave us their mind, so in a sense they make us like them, and it's really amazing to see that in this film. But Gilbert finds them and invites them to join the resistance, and they go to a meeting. Holly is there. It turns out Holly is one of the resistance. She's very upset about what she did to Nada, and she says, you know, I'm really, because of course she bottles him and chucks him out the window. Presumably she doesn't know. I mean, she said I didn't know, and presumably when a woman gets kidnapped and forced to take a weird guy to her home, you know, she probably just was scared. But she apologised to him, and he says I wasn't badly hurt. At the meeting, there's like all these people, and they have these contact lenses they put in. Instead of the glasses, they're now contact lenses, which don't have the interference, which doesn't cause the headache and nausea. Apparently, they use that's where they talk about interference. The way that the Hoffman lenses, whether they're contact lenses or sunglasses, the way that they break through the signal, which creates the fake reality, is it causes it's interference from that causes the malaise. And they say the police are out looking for them. They're, funny enough, they're told they're communists. It's like, I do think this is maybe, it could be, it's been interpreted by many as a left-wing film. And considering when it was made, the late 80s, the concerns that were going on at that time, you know, the Reaganomics, there's also So-called American imperialism was a big thing at that time. There had been the Iran-Contra scandal, things like that. That was when basically the Americans were caught doing deals with funding these violent insurgencies in Nicaragua, you know, and Reagan should have been impeached for that, but instead a guy called Colonel Oliver North took the rap. But anyway, Carpenter actually did comment on this and said that the film, it was the years of living with Ronald Reagan in the early 80s, and that inspired him to make this film. And Gilbert explains this. Gilbert explains how, firstly, the aliens are essentially, he calls them, again, this is like, it's weird because it's a very left-wing kind of metaphor that Gilbert says. He says that they are, no, they're capitalists basically. The aliens are, they're free enterprises. It's all a business. The Earth is their third world. So essentially, the Earth, the people don't realise it, but the Earth is actually, it's under occupation by these aliens, and they treat it just as an income stream. They're just basically treating it as like corporations would treat a third world country, you know, with growing cash crops, sweatshops, things like that. And Gilbert says the Earth is their third world. They're doing this to us the same way that, and it's designed, I'm sure it's designed as a metaphor for globalist corporations, you know, taking over the industry of a Central African country, keeping it poor, growing cash crops, as I said, producing really cheap goods for the Western market, mining minerals for computers in the rich world, in the first world. You see, it's kind of a metaphor for that. So you could interpret it in the sense that it's a very left-wing thing. The film is really a left-wing film. But again, you don't have to see it that way. Many people don't. I actually think it's far deeper and more complex than that. I suspect there's more that Carpenter wasn't telling us. But Gilbert also explains at this meeting how humans are recruited. They basically just say, look, the aliens approach people that they think are malleable, people without principles and very, very greedy, and they say, look, you help us, we'll make you rich. Just do our bidding and we'll make you rich. Simple as that. And you have to betray your own planet, betray your own species, but you know, you'll live a good life. We'll give you a good life. And indeed, that's all revealed later on. There's a police raid at that point, and another fantastic shootout scene. Really, really good. This is classic Hollywood gunfights. They're really good in this film. And then they find a way. The aliens' wristwatches are not just communicators; they're like transporters. They can teleport you in the same way they do on Star Trek or Blake 7. You know, move from one place to place, dematerialize, disappear, and appear somewhere else. They can also create like portals in the air which you can go through. And one is created accidentally when this watch gets damaged, and Frank and Nada jump into it. They find themselves in an underground base. Within this underground base there are signposts in English but also in some alien language, which indicates that he says, what language is that? And it's not any Earth language. Now funny enough, the underground base has these concrete tunnels, which reminds me very much of my hospital, because underground at my hospital they're like service tunnels, and it looked very much like that. They're very long, they sort of disappear into the distance. It's possible that was made by they're not actually that long, and there's like some scenery there to make it look longer. But they're very much like the hospital service tunnels. It was probably filmed somewhere like that. But they find all kinds of things. They find there's an interdimensional spaceport where you disappear and you go to the Andromeda Galaxy. Apparently these aliens come from the Andromeda Galaxy. But they don't have to fly in spaceships. They have interdimensional transport. You literally just pick up your suitcase, you get onto this pad, and it says, welcome aboard, you'll be moved to this particular place, and a beam of light comes down, and it's like Star Trek. You just go like that. And they find out, this guy gives them a tour, they find out, oh, they've got, this is like a network, this is like an empire, this is like an intergalactic empire these aliens have. They take over various planets. The people on the planets don't even know that they're being controlled and they're being occupied. And they take the resources, they take the money, they keep the local inhabitants enslaved, the intelligent species of that planet enslaved and browbeaten, and as I said, always at each other's throats, engineered hatred, things like that. And then the aliens just pocket the cash or pocket the resources. The guy who gives them a tour is basically it's Flowers' character, a guy with no name, but he's one of the residents of the shanty, a poor down and out man. It turns out he's been recruited. He's one of the ones recruited by these aliens. There's this party. There's this like dinner party, and the aliens are giving speeches to the humans, and they say, "You are human colleagues and collaborators, collaborators indeed. Your bank accounts have increased by 39%," and they all applaud. And they're so wonderful. You know, you have helped us enormously, and we're very, very grateful, and we will reward you. This alien giving the speech. The characters now have these contact lenses in, so they can see clearly who's alien, who's not. And this guy Flowers' character, comes up to them, and he's wearing a tux, looking really smart. "Ah, you've been recruited too, boys. Let me show you around." And he gives them this tour. He shows them the spaceport. He tells them everything about what it's like. He's so full of himself. He's so self-satisfied. He's, "Oh, I'm proud to be here, you know, boys." Oh, and he has these this wristwatch and things like that. Isn't it wonderful? Again, he feels no guilt about what he's doing. Maybe he's justified it to himself. Later on, another character who we find out is a bad person justifies what they're doing. They don't do. Flowers just seems to be oblivious. He's greedy. He's greedy. And he tells them that what happens is because eventually they pull guns on Flowers' character, and they say, "Look, you show us where the signal's broadcast from," because they managed to get information about where the signal comes from. It's coming from a TV station called Cable 54, and they threaten him, and he goes to this. They take him to this TV studio, which is like above the ground. This underground base is like in tunnels. They take him to this TV studio, and he just says, "Look," he tries to persuade them. He says, "Look, put down your guns and come away with me. It's all business now. There's no countries. They run the whole show," he says. "And if we just go along with it, they'll leave us alone. And what's more, they'll give us a good life. Don't you want that good life too?" So Flowers' character tries to persuade Frank and Nada to join them. Again, he's made this decision to betray the people, his people, in exchange for some luxury. And again, he's convinced that there is no other way, because you can't fight them; they're too powerful to fight. But maybe that's just a false justification. A lot of people said that. Saruman said that in Lord of the Rings. Said that we must join with Sauron because we can't fight him. We can't fight him. There can be no victory against the powers of the ring, you know. And this is very similar. Eventually, they break into the TV studio and they shoot around. They shoot the aliens. I mean, they specifically target the aliens to shoot Nada and Frank. However, does it make any difference? That's the question. When their own species is willing to sell them out, what difference does it make? You get this every time someone comes in and takes over. This happens. Kevin Annett was talking about this, about how so many of the Indian chiefs in Canada simply just went along with the church, even though the church was killing their children. They just went along with it. And the church had no problem in recruiting elders of the tribes to do their bidding. It seems to be there's always that element of human nature, I think, that makes us vulnerable in that sense. Not all of us, some of us. I wouldn't do that. I would be extraordinarily ashamed of myself if I ever did something like that. I mean, if I ever sell out that way, you have my permission to shoot. To shoot me. You can shoot me as far as I'm concerned. But then they find out from the people where the signal was cast this hypnotic trance on the entire world. This electronic signal is coming from the roof of this building. And so they go up to the roof to destroy the generator. Funnily enough, it's a little interesting thing. The aliens have these radios. The alien police, they have these radios, and they're exactly the same as the Spectre detectors from Ghostbusters. Now this is something that Carpenter must have adopted, because Ghostbusters came earlier than this. Ghostbusters, I think, was 82, 83. This was 88, so he must have had permission to use that prop and adopt it for his purposes. But you remember the Spectre detector in Ghostbusters? It has these appendages at the side and these lights. It's exactly the same. But then they find Holly, and Holly helps them at first. But then you discover that she is a Hawleyan agent. She's a shell. I mean, in every sense of the word, she's a true Hawleyan traitor. And she, just when Nada's about to destroy the signal generator, this machine that causes the signal, she pulls a gun on him and she says, don't do it. And she tries to justify what she's doing. And I think she's a bit unclear, that her dialogue is a little bit unclear, but it's possible that Holly has decided to go along with it, because it could be that she wasn't actually recruited to the bad guy. She wasn't a double agent at all, but she was actually just somebody who at the last minute realizes, oh my God, what am I doing? And maybe she's scared of what will happen. What will happen when the veil is lifted? What will be the effect? There may be some people who support this simply because they believe the truth will be so destructive. I mean, this is rather like if you remember my review of the Discovery film, the one with Robert Redford. Robert Redford plays a scientist who discovers that the afterlife is real, and his son tries to persuade him to just tell everyone you were wrong, because they're scared. Sometimes the effects of people learning the truth can be very, very unpleasant and upsetting. Lisa Cry Freedom Show, she talks about this on her program. And some people just might think, I don't want to go over that obstacle. Even at the very last minute, she might just say, look, I don't. You can't pull the wool. You can't pull the blindfolds off these people. You can't suddenly expose the whole world in one go. Continue just one go, overnight, bang. Look, there's aliens all around you. You can't do it, because the shock would be too much. The effects of that would. I'm afraid of the effects of that shock on people. Even though it's the truth, even though you may think deserve to know the truth. I personally believe that. I don't think it's justified. And of course, I think there's people within the truth embargo, Steve Bassett calls it, who are doing this with UFOs. They're doing it slowly, a little bit at a time. For that reason, they don't want to dump the entire truth on the entire cover-up and end the entire cover-up in one go on people, which is why they're doing it kind of slowly and carefully. Of course, with this particular scenario, you couldn't do that. You can't just slowly turn the signal off and let people see a few aliens and a few subliminal messages. They either see everything, or it's not. Either that, or you just pull the entire stuff, and they see everything. And at the end, you think that's it. But then Nada. There's helicopters also appear with their guns trained on Nada, and Nada realizes at that point he's going to be killed. But he kills Holly and then fires his bullets. He fires a load of bullets into the. He has a gun hidden, because she disarms him and he throws the gun down. And then he shoots his weapon. He empties his weapon into the machine, and the machine is destroyed, and the signal goes off. At that point, he's himself is shot and killed. But his last. But just as he's dying, he looks up and realises he's succeeded, and he lifts his finger like that to the guys in the helicopter, defiant to the last. As I say, an idealist And he converts. Frank goes from being a cynic and being a nihilist into being an idealist like him. And of course, then suddenly everyone can see all the aliens around. There's shock horror. Everyone looks around and sees aliens. There's a guy sitting at the bar in a pub, and everyone's just looking at, oh my god, what's up with you? What's up with his face? And the final scene is hilarious because there's a woman having sex. She's sort of like she's straddling some bloke and shagging away. Behind her is a subliminal message. Presumably it's like a picture or something. It says marry and reproduce. There's a TV on in the room as well. You can see aliens on the TV. And she looks down, and her partner, she's on top of him, and he looks up and says, "Hey baby, what's wrong?" And he's an alien. He's an alien. And he has, it's the first, funny enough, like it's the first time you see an alien without their clothes on, a naked alien, and their skin is like mottled. It has like a kind of, it's not stripes exactly. It's kind of mottling, patchy purple stuff all over. It's a sort of black and purple kind of mottling effect on their skin. It's only in that very, very final shot you see the aliens naked, and you realise it's not just their faces. They do have alien strange bodies as well. Hey, baby, what's wrong? It's presumably, and then it immediately cuts to credits. And presumably, if they'd continued that scene for another second, you'd have heard her going, "Ah!" It's a weird film, They Live. It's one that, you know, I hadn't seen it when it first came out. I'd have been too young really, but it was David Icke who recommended it. Like a lot of like Wag the Dog. It was a David Icke recommendation, so I went and saw it because I was so David Icke orientated in the sort of 2000s. And it was extraordinary actually. See, David essentially believes there's a literal truth behind this, and that because he says he's had witnesses approach him, many people who have seen people overwhelmingly in positions of power, but not always, occasionally shapeshift into a reptilian form, like a humanoid reptilian, basically upright human, but with a strange shaped head, green scaly skin, snake-like eyes, big teeth, sometimes a flickering tongue. And he says so many people have done this. People who are very often psychically sensitive. And it sounds bizarre. When I first heard him say this, I thought, nah, David, you're going too far with this. I didn't actually immediately think that was true. But then I met a lady who did Probe, very normal kind of woman really, well spoken, middle class I'd say, educated, and I had a long conversation with her. We were talking about all kinds of things before she got round to explaining that her husband was a shape-shifting reptilian. And I was like, what? And the way she said it, I can't prove what she said was true, I can't prove it wasn't made up, but it came out in the way it came out from her. To me, smacked of honesty. Now, this woman's actually, her name, she has a fake name actually, which is Susan Reed, and she's written a book. I can't remember what the book was called. I think it's called The Custodians or something like that. Or was that Dolores Cannon's book? I don't know. It's her author name is Susan Reed, and she had a book out. I think it's out of print now. It's quite expensive to get hold of it, but it's got you'll know it if you see it, because the front cover is done by Neil Haig. The front cover is done by Neil Haig, and I can't remember what the title of the book is. It's a few second-hand copies floating around on Amazon, but they're quite expensive. She herself died. She's only sort of in her 30s, but she died. Nothing suspicious, I must say. She drowned. She was on holiday in Spain, and she was swimming in the sea and got out of her depth and drowned, as tourists do. I don't believe there was anything suspicious about her death. But this book, my ex-partner Sue Stain got a copy of it, and I did read it, and it's quite an extraordinary claim she makes in it. But I've known other people who've had this experience too. Alice Taylor. I've not seen anyone shapeshift, but does John Carpenter? This is the question I want to bring up in the live stream. Well, I'll leave it now. I'll leave the whole thing now. This is my review. We'll tackle it more in discussion. But do you think John Carpenter knows more than he's letting on? Do you think the metaphor of the alien occupation in secret, with them disguised by creating this hypnotic spell on humanity, do you think we should interpret it more literally than many people have? So we'll go into that in more detail in the live stream. It'll probably be this weekend. I should just an aside before I go. This is on a completely different subject. Sorry, I don't like inserting these little bits in, but the long saga of my 9/11 reply to Stefan Molyneux has finally ended. Now, you know this video I made with Molyneux about 9/11. Again, in 9/11, it is relevant, the 9/11 thing, to this subject matter They Live. It's 3 times now. It's been banned, and it was banned for some breaching of the terms and conditions, terms of service. But every time I appealed it the first time, and the appeal was granted. The second time it was banned, and then the video was restored before I even knew it. I just had 2 emails saying, "We've banned your video for breaching TOS. Oh, we've made a mistake. We've restored the video." But then the third time I came and found an email saying, "We've banned this particular video because of A, B, and C." I appealed it, and they didn't grant me my appeal. So now that video's gone. It's gone from YouTube finally. But of course it's on all the alt tech sites, so up yours, YouTube. So yeah, so just to let you know, that particular saga is at an end. But it just goes to show, you know, how no humans do this. It's all automatic. So yes, you see, again, this is not completely off topic, because maybe the people, the creatures that run the world are not human. And they use things that are not human to do what they want. There's like robot soldiers and robot police, and AIs and automatic, autonomous drones and things. Funny enough, you have like the drones, like these little flying saucer drones that can only be seen with the glasses. Anyway, guys, that is the review section, part 2 of this They Live watch party. The next part is the live stream. Keep an eye out for the notice, which I'll be putting up in a couple of days. Thank you, all of you, for watching Herpanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.